Hello, my awesome ELAR students. Today, we are going to discuss the elements of fiction. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand the elements of fiction, make inferences and predictions about fiction, identify key terms used in fiction, and identify character traits. Now, I know you're thinking, what are the elements of fiction? Well, let's talk about the basics. When writers create fiction, they use these steps to develop their story. Every story has a setting. To determine the setting, you must know when and where a story takes place. The characters in a story are who the story is about. They usually consist of people, animals, and creatures. There are often two types of characters, a protagonist and an antagonist. The protagonist is usually the good guy, main character, and the hero in the story. The antagonist is the bad guy, or the evil villain in a story. Every character has traits that make them unique. We call those character traits. You can make predictions about what the character may do in the future and make inferences as to why the character reacted a certain way based upon that character's traits. For instance, if there's an evil vampire who is selfish, mean, and scary, we can predict that the mother would not allow the vampire to babysit her child, now or in the future. Also, we can infer that she doesn't particularly like the vampire because he isn't friendly. Now, let's learn about the plot. The plot is the sequence of events that happen in a story. Exposition. This is the very first part of the plot. Both the characters and the setting are introduced in the exposition. Did you happen to notice the characters and the setting? Let's go back and have another look. Let's take a look at the characters and the setting. There are two boys and a ghost. Those are the characters. We can infer that it's Halloween because the boys are in the city and there are jack-o'-lanterns and a ghost. The conflict is the problem in the story. The conflict is usually addressed right after the exposition. Let's take a look at the conflict in this story. The boy seems to be mad because the ghost is frustrating him. He wants the ghost to go away. Next is the rising action. These are the events that lead up to the climax. The rising action builds suspense and develops the conflict. The rising action of this story is that more ghosts arrive and the boy becomes even more angry, yet the other boy is still happy. Another part of the rising action is that meanwhile, the ghost-filled bus is headed to town to pick up all the ghosts. The climax is the turning point in the story. The conflict is resolved and the story gets better for the protagonist. Here's the climax of this story. Excuse me, but we are trying to get back to Ghostville. We need candy to buy bus tickets. Here, you can have some of my candy. There you have it. The climax solves the problem. As we can see, the ghosts were not trying to harm the boys. They only needed candy to get back to Ghostville. And then we have falling action. All the loose ends of the conflict are tied up. The story comes to an ending. In this story, the falling action is that the ghosts take the candy and load up on the bus headed to Ghostville. The other boy becomes happy. The last part of the plot is the resolution. This is the very ending of the story. The resolution of this story is that before the ghosts left the city, they exchanged Snapchat information with the boys and they all kept in touch. Okay, class, we have now reached the end of our lesson. Let's review our notes.